Moderator Tom Gordon, convener of the Iona Community Board. Moderator, it is remarkable that the General Assembly can meet in this hybrid format this year, but it is equally remarkable that charities and churches have survived this pandemic in good shape and perhaps even prospered. One of these, on which your board is pleased to report, is the Iona Community. Its coping strategies, its commitments, its organisational structure, its accommodation on Iona and its sharpness of thought have indeed been and remain quite remarkable. So this report presented to this year's General Assembly seeks to emphasise this and to highlight specific issues. Moderator, as it is the custom of the General Assembly to invite the leader of the Iona Community to present the bulk of the board's report, I would welcome your invitation to Ruth Harvey, the leader of the Iona Community, to do just that.
I'm delighted to do that. Is the Assembly of a similar mind? Welcome, Ruth.
Thank you, Moderator. Ruth Harvey 101, but I'm speaking here in my capacity as leader of the Iona Community, and it's a great pleasure to do so. The report of the board outlines key achievements and concerns raised in this last year. I propose now, however, to focus on our 3 charitable aims by way of offering some more depth to the report. The charitable aims of the Iona Community ring as true today as they did when first articulated in the 1950s. Trustees and members are bound to, firstly, establishing new forms of Christian worship, witness, prophecy, mission and service. Secondly, to providing training for the mission of the church today. And thirdly, to work amongst young people. The first of these commits us to establishing new forms of Christian worship, among other things. For over 40 years, John Bell, along with the late Graham Moll and others, has brought light, challenge, depth and joy to the lives of millions around the globe as they have sung his lyrics, grinned at his gospel reflections, and had their lives changed through encounters in workshops and worship, festivals and seminars. John retires towards the end of 2022. So it's important to acknowledge here in this forum the remarkable impact that John Bell has had on the life of the church and will continue to have, I might add, and on the ability of millions of people to sing their truth to God. We wish John well in his retirement. It is to the work of the renewal of worship, witness, prophecy, mission and service that our teams at our island centres on Mull and Iona and on the mainland, and indeed our members around the globe, bear witness week in and week out, in particular as we welcome guests to live an intentional life of community at our island centres. So we share here the first of 3 short videos, this one of Wahida, who joined us under our Unlocked scheme, where space is made available at Iona Abbey free of charge to those who have been particularly adversely affected by the global pandemic.
Hi, I'm Clara.
Now that's number 3. There we are, Wahida.
It's my first time here, and I needed this. I needed this 7 to 8 days because
she's saying wonderful
life
things.
Over the past 2 years has been a real challenge.
Obviously. Maybe we don't have sound.
It's my first time here, and I needed this. I needed this 7 to 8 days because life over the past 2 years has been a real challenge with COVID-19. Lots of loss and bereavement, and being the primary carer for my father, my heart and my soul has needed a rest. My physical body has needed a rest. And this has been a real breath of fresh air for me. And just belonging to a community, wouldn't you say, Beth?
Yes.
Meeting people like Beth has been really special.
And she's with Beth, who then goes on to extol other experiences and virtues of life on Iona. It's not always that windy, it's not always that sunny or dry. The second charitable aim of the Iona community commits us to providing training for the mission of the church today. The programme during our annual Columba Fest, which is in early June each year in Glasgow, will include this year listening to one another as we explore what mission means for us. One of the most powerful ways we continue to engage in and train and equip for mission is through the work of our common concern networks. If the Iona community's local and regional groups are the warp that roots the cloth of our community in time and space, then our common concern networks are the weft, weaving our concerns across the globe and across people who hold a range of very different perspectives. The report of the board highlights the actions of two of these common concern networks, our CCNs focusing on peace in the Middle East and on migration and refugees. In March of this year, during Lent, we issued a call to peace in the face of war in Ukraine, weaving threads of peacemaking between all 7 of our common concern networks. Believing that the community we seek must be mirrored in the community we practice, as we make requests of those in power, so also members rededicate ourselves to using our own power, alone and together, to bring the peace and the justice to which Jesus calls us. Our call to peace in March this year said this: "In the face of violence and in the knowledge that words alone are never enough, we remind ourselves that Jesus calls us in the gospel to welcome the stranger, tend the sick, provide shelter for the persecuted, and speak truth to power. Jesus calls us to be reconcilers and peacemakers. We believe that this means that we must be islands of sanctuary, offering space to all refugees and any seeking asylum. We must sustain life on earth, noticing that the fossil fuel cost of modern warfare accelerates carbon emissions rates at a time when our window of opportunity is closing for hopeful climate action. We weave our lives as stewards of creation with our work as peacemakers. We believe that this gospel call calls us to eradicate weapons of mass destruction by joining in with the planned non-violent actions against nuclear weapons at Fastlane, starting on the 7th of June this year. We believe that this call calls us to practice reconciliation through training and equipping ourselves to be peacemakers in our lives and in our localities through such excellent charities as Place for Hope and others. And we believe this call calls us to pray for peace by reading scripture, by reflecting on material that inspires and nourishes us, and recognizing the deep bond that unites us through the Holy Spirit across all boundaries. And so our second short clip we share here is a recorded conversation between Victoria and Liz, 2 theologians who will be leading our membership in reflections on mission over our summer community week on Iona this year. They offer both inspiration and challenge to us all.
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm a first-year PhD student at the University of Edinburgh, studying hope and the ecological crisis.
Hi, I'm Victoria. I'm a third-year PhD student at the University of Edinburgh. I'm in the field of world Christianity, but my PhD is looking at mission, and one of my case studies is the Iona community.
Great. And should we talk a little bit about Young Woken Christian and what we did? Do you want to tell them about how you started the project?
So during lockdown, I kind of kept seeing tweets and hearing General Assembly conversations from different churches about how kind of young people have this woke political outlook, and kind of that word woke was shut down conversation with young people because it made their views seem like utopian and like non-realistic and things like that. So I kind of just sat down and I thought, well, my dream is to write a book called Young Woken Christian, to explain to the older generation that actually these kind of things we're talking about are at the heart of our mission as Christians and at the heart of discipleship. So I sent it off to SEM Press on a whim, not thinking they would take it, but they did. And since then, it's had like a really good selling rate, and really good conversations have come from it. And the Iona community have asked us as a group of young people to lead their community week. And Liz has written one of the chapters on hope and climate change, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed writing the chapter, and I think so. What I wrote about really was the kind of necessity of hope in the context of ecological crisis. I think that what we see as a reaction to the kind of climate crisis often is, on the one hand, denialism and the kind of like pretense it's all going to be fine. On the other hand, a real sense of like despair and doom, which, while in many cases can be a kind of realistic response to what we're seeing on the kind of basis of scientific evidence, I think when we take it too far, can really stop us doing anything about it. And what's also important to remember is there's like a lot to be done in terms of like stopping the crisis or like reducing the amount of warming that we face, but also in terms of like mitigation and protection of vulnerable communities. And so in my chapter, I sort of argue for the need for hope in kind of as part of our like ethical response to the crisis. I'm not going to say more because you can read the book.
And so like the other chapters talk about queer theology, disabilities, homelessness, like trans theology, like all of these different spheres that young people are interested in. And so another thing we've been asked to talk about is where we hope or think the church should be going in the next few years. And currently I'm in Palestine with Bethlehem Bible College on a peace and justice making course, and just constantly hearing like Palestinian Christians and Muslims kind of say like, we're just ignored in the West, like no one's hearing our voice, no one's caring, like Israeli occupation is just like normalized. It's just quite heartbreaking. So I kind of am trying to push the church. I hope the church can listen better, empathize better, and respond with action in the years to come. I think that's the only way we can be relevant to society, not relevant to society to fit in and to get bums on our seats, but relevant as in to disciple to society, is to help alleviate suffering and pain, and bringing the gospel is physical and incarnated and loving and all of these things, and life flourishing is the main thing, I think, for me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think, you know, if I look at my like relatively short lifetime, but nonetheless, we're still kind of in one of the most unstable, most kind of like problematic periods that I've known. You know, there's like war in Ukraine. We're beginning really to see the effects of the climate crisis kind of taking hold around the world. We in this country are facing like a cost of living crisis that's driving millions more families into poverty. And I think that if the church doesn't kind of step up and offer like a prophetic voice, and also kind of just like really concrete action to help people to welcome refugees from Ukraine and from all around the world, to do what it can to address the ecological crisis, then I think that, as you say, Victoria, like its witness will just be seen to be irrelevant. And this isn't separate from kind of the gospel or from the church's mission. This is absolutely part of it.
Thank you, and you can consider that video at your leisure on our website. Our third charitable aim commits us to working with young people, as has been demonstrated by the conversations with Victoria and Liz. We're delighted to confirm that this year we'll be working tirelessly this year and over the next years to retrofit the MacLeod Centre on Iona as a state-of-the-art centre for young people and families, particularly for those who are excluded or marginalised in society. We'll work with experts in the field, and in the spirit of the rebuilding of Iona Abbey, we'll work with those to make sure that we work with apprentices and others who will guide us through their skills in this retrofit. I give the final word now to Clara, a recent volunteer at Iona Abbey.
Hi, I'm Clara. I'm from Hamburg, and I've stayed the last 2 months with the Iona community in the Abbey back there as a volunteer. And so what I find astonishing about this place is that it is so small, but you have so many more adventures and memories than you would ever gather in a big city. And the praying together, the singing, the laughing, the crying, you have much deeper human relationships on the same side, at the same time as that you would have natural tranquility and peace. So you have these two poles of natural tranquility and the peace together with people and the deep connections, and that's just astonishing and wonderful. So I will hope to be back soon.
Moderator, we're grateful to Ruth for these insights and the sharpness of thought that they contain. Moderator, I have pleasure in presenting the report of the Iona Community Board, and as I'm not a commissioner, I would invite the Principal Clerk to move the deliverances.
Moderator, I so move.
Seconded.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Ruth, as well. I have one question, and it's from Ian Young, number 244.
Thank you, Moderator. It's not actually a question, it's more of a comment, if that's allowed.
Okay.
Ian Young, 244. As a community kid or a child of a community member, and as an ex-volunteer who has worked in both the Abbey and the MacLeod Centre on Iona, I would like to thank the board for its report and all its work, and all the staff, both on Iona and on the mainland, for all its work. I would encourage the members of the Assembly and everyone else to visit Iona and continue to pray for the staff, volunteers and all who are connected with the Iona community, in particular the leader, Ruth Harvey, and her family, and commend to the Assembly the daily worship from Iona on Facebook and the work of the Wild Geese Resource Group. Thank you, Moderator.
Ian, thank you.
Moderator, I'm immensely grateful for that comment. I couldn't have put it better myself.
And Nico Bradwell, number 67.
Moderator, Aniko Schütz-Bradwell, number 67. I want to add the same thanks and commendation of the report to the Assembly. I should declare an interest as an associate member of the Iona community. 16 years ago, that volunteer that we had up there, Clara from Germany, was me. I came to Iona for 6 weeks as a volunteer, and that's me, a minister in the Church of Scotland and an Assembly trustee 16 years later. What you do, the work on Iona and in Glasgow and throughout the country and indeed throughout the world is just amazing, and it is so inspiring. And what we heard there from the young people is what we all need to hear, I think, in order to work in our churches, in our own communities. It is so inspiring and encouraging, and it really, really helps to equip us in what we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move to the deliverance? Number 1, to receive the reports. Number 2. Now, number 3, there are 2 people who wish to speak. First of all, Muriel Pearson, number 548, and Heather Dobson, number 549. You're not too far apart. So would Heather please stand by, and Muriel, would you speak first, please?
Thank you, Moderator. Muriel Pearson, number 548, Associate Minister in Tiberias, in the Congregation of Jerusalem and Tiberias, and Heather, who's going to speak after me, is our session clerk. I wanted to take the opportunity, while the topic of Israel-Palestine is on the agenda because of the Iona Community Report, to say a few words just by way of introduction to me in my new role here. It's really encouraging to see that the Iona community continues to push in terms of peace and justice and peacemaking and reconciliation. And that's really at the heart of what the Church of Scotland is doing here through our congregations, our hotel, our guest house, and our school in Tabitha. We work with partners who are committed to justice and peace, very often partners who are bridging divides between Jews and Arabs, coming together perhaps through tragedy like the Parents' Circle, or working to tell stories that are sometimes submerged, like an organisation called Sidaku Rayut. Now, moderator, giving adverts has now become a custom of the General Assembly because it's happened twice. So I hope you will allow me to commend the Friends of St Andrews, Jerusalem and Tiberias, and invite people to go looking on the website standrewsjerusalem.org to find out how to become a friend and keep in touch with what we're doing, and also find ways to take the practical actions and support that the Iona community are encouraging. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Muriel. Heather? Welcome, Heather. Heather, we can't hear you. Still can't hear you.
The work of the Iona. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Commissioner 4549, Heather Dobson. I appreciate the work of the Iona community, but as someone who has lived in Israel as a Christian for 41 years, I would like to query the implicit meaning that seems to be behind the text of 3. That is that the Israeli government is the only entity which needs to attend to human rights, justice and peace. Are there not other communities in this land which need to be challenged over their actions also? It is not always known that Israeli Arab citizens have the right to vote. They can and do serve in the judiciary and the army, if they wish, and the Supreme Court, represent the country as diplomats abroad, and sit in the Israeli parliament. Israeli citizens of all faiths are subject equally to the well-publicized threats of destruction from neighbors and live in fear of violent acts while going about their daily lives. To give 2 examples, some years ago, a driver was stopped and shot, having been identified as an Orthodox Jew by his big bushy beard. He was a bearded Greek Orthodox priest. A former student of the school where I worked was also ambushed and killed while jogging. He was an Arab. It's not a question of who is suffering the most or who is right. A coin has 2 sides. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak to that, convener?
Moderator, we're grateful for that. The issues around Israel-Palestine are very complex, as you know, and indeed this General Assembly has debated them on a number of occasions over the years. We are simply concerned that human rights issues across the board might be inclined to slip off our agenda as other issues take more immediate precedence. And our concern is that these issues, in all their complexity, are kept in the forefront of our minds as people struggle to make sense of what's happening to them and about their future, and to commend all of them to our thoughts and our prayers.
Thank you. Can we move to the acceptance of 3 or otherwise? Does the Assembly accept 3? Thank you. 4, I have William Imlay wishing to speak. Number 357.
Moderator Bill Imlay, 357. Can I commend and thank the Iona community for all their work, and particularly the accommodation, I might say, on Iona. It comes to heart just now because 50 years ago, I got a lot of brownie points for organising our honeymoon on Iona. And I'm still working on that one. And I'm just looking at this motion, or this part of the deliverance, and recognising that the slave trade in the 18th and 19th century was not Scotland's finest hour. And we can't duck that, we can't get away from it. However, I was looking at section 4.8, and it still concerns me greatly that today in Scotland, working at all kinds of different places, there are more slaves today than there were, or there has been since medieval times. And I would have liked to at least the thinking behind this part of the delivery to include that. And I'm sure it's in your heart, but it's not mentioned. Thank you, Moderator.
Moderator, I'm very grateful for that comment. And I would simply say that, yes, these things will continue to be discussed and will continue to be on our agenda. And we're grateful to those who have encouraged us to look further at these issues. And I would simply take the opportunity to commend to the General Assembly the paper that the Iona Cathedral trustees have prepared, a link of which is in our own board's report, and indeed something I've only read myself this week, the excellent paper from the Theological Forum around apologising for historic wrongs. These will continue to inform our thought process, and we look forward next year to the Faith Impact Forum bringing more detailed issues before the General Assembly on this subject. But your board will continue to look at this and to take it on board, and we're very grateful.
Thank you, Convener. 4. And the deliverance as a whole. Convener, I wonder if I might say something before you leave for lunch. Tom, the community never stands still. That's been the case down through the years. Always seeking to reach out, always seeking to make a difference, always seeking to challenge injustice. And the General Assembly would like to thank the community for all the practical, spiritual, and cutting-edge work that it does in the name of the Kingdom of God, both nationally and internationally as well. God bless you in all your endeavours, and thank you.